Okay, while they're getting things ready in here for the volunteer dinner, I thought I'd take you through the machine shop myself this time. Remember last year there wasn't much going on in here, but this year they do have the 152 in here and they're slowly tearing into it. The outlook is 2 years, so kind of like what we've been saying on the 1225. But this is, going to be at least 2 years. That's the least amount of time that they figure on this thing will be running. Probably at most would be 4 years. So yeah, still got a while to go. 464, like I said in the other video, has at least 5-6 years left on it because it runs pretty much every day. But they'll be working on this thing. See in here in the cab here, you got the fireman's side. It's got your pull open door for the firebox. Pretty simple locomotive, although it's more modern for a narrow gauge locomotive by standards because it's only built in 1920. And there weren't as many built after that time for narrow gauge in at least in the U.S. or most of North America. Here's the engineer's side. See up there is the brake levers, and over there will be the reverser. That lawn handle coming up, and then the throttle, of course, is that thing right there. And this big octopus of lines thing here is the oiler. And unlike 1225, I think I've said in one of the update videos for 1225, it does not have that thing. It has it works on just as the engine goes down the track, the oil flows down automatically. It's heated by the steam, and it goes into where it's needed. Whereas on here, the engineer and the fireman have to open lines to get the oil to where it needs it. Of course, the oiler is at the front. There's a tank that holds the oil, and it's a keyhole firebox type locomotive, where you know old-fashioned keyholes. They kind of makes like the end of a dog bone kind of shape. That's kind of like what this firebox is. The bottom of it fits in between the drivers and saves up some room here. The ash pan is right here. It makes it a little bit more difficult to service based on where it is, though. You can see you'd have to drop a lot more ash in the middle than you could ever on the sides, so it's a little bit more difficult that way. It's a fairly small locomotive. It's only 38 tons. It was, like I said, built in 1920 by Baldwin for the original Alaska Railroad, the Alaska Engineering Commission, or the AEC, and it operated on what was known as the Tanana branch, or the Tanana Valley Railroad up there, because, well, it was around the time they were building the standard gauge portion of the line, just starting out. But this narrow gauge survived because they could only get so much into the town of Tanana on the bridge that they had, and then in the winter the ice would freeze over, and they just lay some tracks in the ice. There's a picture of this locomotive on the ice pulling a train across. I forget. There's a book that I found it in, and they've talked about here. As you can see, it's simple valve gear here. It's still outside valve gear too. Also mentioned that the middle driver, kind of like what you see on the Little River 110, is blind. There's no flange on it. See? It makes it easier to get around corners. Even though this is a pretty small wheelbase, it's not too many feet. It looks like probably only about on the drivers, I'd say probably around 18-19 feet, so not very long. The overall engine length is probably about 35 feet. anyway, they said on the shop tour here, they have to replace a lot of the front end. See the beam here, the pilot beam where the cow catcher hangs off. You just pretty much ride all the way through. This would this would have a bolt going all the way through it to hold on the beams for the cow catcher. And you see how it's all cracked over here too, where the coupler is. And the coupler is joined here, and the frame goes all the way underneath. But this is where you attach your steps and your cow catcher too. And that's all going to need to be replaced. Of course, they need to take the coupler off for that to get right at it. See, the door is taken off, and you can see right inside the smoke box here. There's enough light. I don't need to have a flashlight like I do for 1225 when I do those updates. Yeah, so you can see the branch pipe there, and the other steam pipes coming off of it, and the petticoat, and the bell chamber, which would be hanging down there for the steam to score up while allowing the smoke to come out of the tubes and shoot up the stack. That has been removed, just like in 1225. So, but unlike 1225 and bigger locomotives, it doesn't have superheaters, and even though they would be removed, you can tell right away that it's not a superheated engine because all the holes in the tube sheet are all the same size. So that's one way you tell the difference. Meanwhile, like I said, I think it's going to be like at least 2 years on this thing. We said the same thing with 1225, and we're going to be working into our 3rd year as we finish it. Yeah, here's the builder's plate. And you saw in the earlier video I did on 464 that had its builder's plate put back on. It didn't run later in life. It didn't run with that on there. A little history on this engine, though. Around 1930, the standard gauge was finally able to build into Tenena, and the narrow gauge stuff, well, pretty much they didn't have any use for it. So, since it was federal government owned, they pretty much used it as Army surplus and decided to send them other places. During the 30s, history's kind of clouded on it. Spent most of life in storage, but during World War II, it went to I guess first it went to the White Pass, but barely got used up there, and was later sent to Seattle, Washington, to work in a shipyard, and spent some time down there. I think that's where they said it got different paint on it. I don't think it was green though. That came after they found it. They said they found it in the salvage yard, supposedly under a pile of tires. And Hal Wilmunder, one of the at the time one of the first people to start operating tourist railroads, bought it for a couple of his railroads, but didn't really get to use it. But it came out here in 1975, the first steam locomotive out here, and it's been running pretty much ever since. But again, there's been a few years where it hasn't run at all, specifically when 464 first got running in 1989 through 1994. But other than that, it hasn't operated in almost 3 years now. They've been waiting to get some startup money to start on it. It really had a few days left on it when they put it under, but that's really not enough to justify spending money on it when you got 464 sitting over here under the smoke jack for the night. But yeah, so very simple locomotive, right size for this kind of railroad. It was originally this is its original number, and then before it came here it was number 2, and the original number was put back on it just in 2006 for a photo charter, and the cab was repainted green. the boiler, the jacketing was already green when it first came here, but they had the cab just a stain color. I think it looked a lot better that way, but it's not really original when you think about it, but it's nice. And being in the machine shop here, you got an overhead crane, you got a pit, and you got the drop table here, which is used to drop wheels out from under the engines and the cars, and they're brought over on the other side. I think last year's tour he was talking about that. Really didn't get great close-up of it, but back over here, underneath these grates, it would come up and be pulled up out of here, and they'd take the sets over to wherever they needed it using the crane, and usually it's on the lathe back here. So yeah, here's some sets here right now off of some of the cars. And this is a really big one too. It's Army surplus, I think they said, but you can see the size compared to the one to the little gumboard driller we got at SRI that works. This is pretty good size. But we have our own lathe, an 80-inch lathe, so bigger than this, that we'd like to get going again, probably once we get the new shop. That's still a while away. We'll get the engine running well before that gets done. So yeah, good overview of the machine shop here, and 152, and it's starting its rebuild. And it needs to be rebuilt definitely, because 464 will be going out soon. Okay, so that's what's going on there.